Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NBA webinar series 7.0. We're happy to have you here with us. My name is John ARUOTURE, and I'll be your moderator for today. This session, we'll have two speakers, very distinguished energy practitioners, and we are all waiting for them to unload us with value-based insights into how lawyers and legal practitioners will get opportunities in the enormous value chain in the emerging or evolving energy sector in Nigeria. Welcome, Mr. George Etomi. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you. My pleasure.
Thank you. Welcome, Mofesomo Tayo-Oyetibo, SAN.
Thank you. Good.
Can you hear me? Yeah, we're very glad to have you. In the session, we'll have 20 minutes for each speaker, and then we'll have a Q&A session where participants will be allowed to ask their questions. They can, when the speakers are on, you can send questions on the chat box. Thereafter, when it's time for Q&A, anybody that wishes to speak or ask any question will be expected to indicate by raising his hands on the device. So we'll choose from there. I hope we have that. Thank you once again. So our lead speaker for today is Mr. George Etomi. There's so much to talk about him. First, he has 41 years experience in the energy sector. And he is the pioneer chairman of the NBA section of business law. He revolutionized law practice in terms of the commercial part of it. Before he came on board, we all knew law to a very large extent was more of litigation. But when he came in with his team, he ensured that we lawyers will get to understand the other side of legal practice. And it's something we are all enjoying till this day. And for that, we are very grateful to him. He has been involved, he's a distinguished transactional lawyer with over 41 years worth of experience in the energy sector, banking, telecommunications, with a wide range of finance, arbitration, so much. It's really enlightening to know that as far back as 1978, he already had his master's from the LSE, the London School of Economics and Political Science. And so it's very, very loaded. And so, Mr. George, I wish to begin this way. I think you have been, we've had a flurry of activities now in the energy space in Nigeria. The IOCs are leaving and the indigenous companies are taking over. There's about 5 deals. 4 of them have passed regulatory approval. We have the Seplat ExxonMobil deal. We have the Wando Ajib and 2 others that have passed regulatory approval. I think it's just the Renaissance and the XPDC deal that is still on. We're still waiting. That is for that part. On gas, for gas, we have been told by Nigeria is more of a gas nation than a crude nation. for crude, we have just about 37 billion barrels in our reserves. But for gas, we have about 300 million standard cubic feet of gas in our reserves, proven results. Unproven, we have about 700 trillion standard cubic feet. In order to have a successful decade of gas policy transition, which started some years ago, there has been a lot of government investments in the gas infrastructure space. We, for now, the existing gas infrastructure, of course, we have the Escravos gas pipeline. We have the West African gas pipeline already existing. But the ongoing projects in that realm is the AKKP, Ajakuta, Kaduna-Kano gas pipeline, and we have the OB3. Now, in all this, we know that we're having discussions on CNG, LPG. We're trying to see how we can have a proper energy mix. So the question now, sir, in all this is, we have, as lawyers in this energy value chain, how do lawyers take on this and see how we can benefit? What are the opportunities inherent in all these activities? So it's not just the energy practitioners that benefit. Lawyers are there. Just a few lawyers understand these things. We elected to bring you here so you could, in layman terms, teach us how we can view this and see how lawyers who have done nothing in this space at all can get valuable insights on how to proceed to play in this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you the chairman of the Warri branch?
No, I'm the chairman of the webinar committee.
Oh, the webinar committee. Oh, you are John.
The chairman is on transit, sir. Or you will join us anytime. I'm John. John.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I just was going to commend you for the effort and to say that that's the spirit. Because in the space that we're in, there's competition globally for these very things you are talking about. How do lawyers who've not been exposed in these areas, how do they get in, and so forth and so on? I think the first thing to let you know is that your competitor for the legal jobs that are available, can't they hear me? Is there a problem with hearing?
Yeah, I think they're indicating. I can hear you actually, but I don't know if participants can hear you. So let me find out if participants.
Let's find out so we don't.
Okay.
We don't waste time.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Good. So participants can hear you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as I've always said from my SBL days, there are really very few choices we have as lawyers to get involved in these highly specialized areas that you're talking about. Nobody's going to serve you lunch ready. You've got to sort of go out, seek for it. Just like what you're doing now. Webinars like this, other sessions like this, first of all, create awareness amongst lawyers about the existence of these areas and the opportunities in them. That's why I'm particularly commending you. But I'll go one step further to say that as many of your members who can participate in the activities of these sections, and in this case, particularly the section on business law, they will be right on the money in terms of the pathway to getting familiar with these things. Because it is not a function of how do those of us who don't have the experience come into it. The clients you would need to serve in these areas demand the highest standard of legal service. Because as you can see from the myriads of huge projects you talked about. These are sophisticated, very expensive projects. So nobody's going to settle for less, or nobody's going to manage, or nobody's going to say, oh, they're Nigerian lawyers, let us patronize them. So my first advice would be get your section members, branch members, let them participate in section activities. And please, don't say you have to travel to Lagos or Abuja to be part of it. Thank God to the web, just like we're doing now. You can be active online with these sections, because these sections work through committees. And there are committees on energy, specific committees on power, on oil and gas. You get to meet with your peers. As I always say in this profession, you can do busybody, volunteer to take notes, get into it. Don't worry if you will look foolish. It doesn't matter. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If, as the Bible says, if you knock on the door, it will be open. But if you think somebody somewhere is worrying about you and we bring it to your doorstep, it ain't going to happen. So that's the first thing. So to go directly to the opportunity, there are myriads. I'm sure when Mufe comes, you probably concentrate on power. I'm also in the power space when we're talking about general energy, but the principles are the same. Excuse me, the principles are the same. You look at, there are huge opportunities. All these things you just talked about, divestments, investments, arrangements and all that, they're all predicated on agreements. Somebody's going to draft those agreements. Somebody's going to negotiate those agreements. So who best to do that than lawyers, and even better lawyers in Nigeria? Now, a lot of these businesses have their lawyers overseas. And because precedent is so important in these areas, they'd rather go for lawyers who have over the years, over the decades, been involved in legal drafting like this, because you cannot afford to be wrong in your negotiations or your drafting, because it could spell losses running into the millions of dollars. And if you are abroad, your client can come after you for negligence. So the first thing, therefore, is, as I told you, go and get familiar with these things. The opportunities exist. Take these things you just mentioned about. In the run-up to all this divestment, don't forget the big boys, the Shells, the ExxonMobils, the whatever. Their presence in Nigeria is part of the overall energy security strategy for their own home countries. So we are an economic calculation for them. So whenever they feel that a particular investment, it doesn't serve that purpose anymore, they will move. And that's what's happening to all these divestments you are seeing. They are going from onshore participation to mainly offshore. And that is, again, is the global trend, apart from the community issues that they've all faced. They are all looking for huge opportunities in the gas sector, which will then be piped through transatlantic pipelines to their home countries. So what then happens to us as a country in Nigeria? We've got to look at what also serves our interest. For the longest of times, the oil and gas industry has been the mainstay of this economy. But sadly, if you look at the presence of indigenous producers vis-a-vis these big boys that I mentioned, they're responsible for just about 5, certainly less than 10% of total oil production. But I thank God for small mercies. 10 years ago, I would not have given you this number. 10 years, it was in the 1 or 2%. So the first good news for me and you as lawyers is that we're now getting increasing number of domestic players as this divestment is occurring, which then means that for you to lobby for a job, you don't necessarily have to fly to London or to New York or Japan to meet somebody. There's somebody in country that you can associate with. But please, the only thing you owe your client is to know your subject matter. I will tell you a particular thing that happened when the power sector privatization took place, roughly about 10, 11, 12 years ago. There were hardly lawyers you could call, oh, these are power sector lawyers. And most of the people who were involved in the negotiations leading to the privatization were mostly foreign lawyers. Now, how did we get involved? It was through friends of ours who wanted to participate, who, even though they had gotten some foreign law firms, felt, look, I still will be more comfortable if a lawyer I trust in Nigeria can break it down for me. And please don't miss out on the lessons that these statements are making, the import of these lessons. So when your local players look for you, they come to you because they will trust the advice you give them, even at times over and above what their foreign lawyers will give to them. So what did we do? In our own case, we quickly went and got a power expert. And we did a crash, something similar to what we're doing now, weekend course. And he came down, broke down the terminologies, the meanings, like you said, in layman's language. He broke it down for us. A week later, we were on the negotiating table. And it served us so well that at least you understood the rudiment, which meant you were not going to make a fool of yourself on the negotiating table. But each time you keep your eyes and your ears open, you are adding to your experience. So by the time we went for the final negotiations with the BP and co, we had a few more Nigerian lawyers in the picture. 10 years later, I can tell you without fear of contradiction that perhaps this space is now 80% of Nigerian lawyers. So those are huge opportunities. And so from, as I mentioned, from negotiations to drafting to even litigation, mediation, litigation, because these sectors are very time sensitive. Yes, litigations occur, but most times we try to mediate our difficulties. Because if you go, we do a typical go to court, get injunctions, do that, and stall a project. It is bad news to investors. So even we lawyers on different sides of a matter, we call ourselves up and we look at areas where we can give and take and provide a solution to the client. So mediation is important. So you have your entire gamut. You are negotiating, you are drafting, you are mediating, you are litigating in extreme circumstances. Now, in terms of the volume of the market, that's the other thing we should also look at. As we can see in Nigeria's, before telecoms came into play, Nigeria's GDP was round about $200 billion. But with the advent of the telecom sector, it shot up dramatically. In fact, it put us in Africa as the #1 leading economy. Now we are beginning to see how the energy space through power is going to change these dynamics. The whole of Nigeria, 200 million plus people, were all huddling around 5,000 megawatts of electricity. The rule of thumb is that you need 1,000 megawatts per 1 million of your population. So ideally, we should be looking at 200,000 megawatts. But we're talking about 5,000. But even at the 5,000, since privatization, there has been a beehive of activities in the power sector. And following the enactment of the Electricity Act, which has brought in the states to play in this otherwise exclusive area to federal government before, you are going to begin to have a a ripple effect. The thing is going to go down to the states. So all those of you who initially thought that business law meant you had to be in Lagos or Abuja, no, it's good news for you guys. It's coming down to you. So what you owe yourselves and the profession is to quickly just rejig your method of learning. Don't be put off by these technical terms, because the one thing that's good about this our profession is that because law is such a living subject, it allows you to permeate just about any subject matter. It is immaterial whether or not you studied it in a university. If you did 5 courses in a university for 5 years, you would have done 25 courses max. But in real life, law attends to every human endeavor. So you will find yourself participating in areas of business endeavor that you never studied in university. So for us, there's no rest as lawyers. You must keep updating, upgrading. Look, I'm 47 years at the bar. I'm 70 years of age. I know power law. Everything I know about power is in the last 10, 11 years. So if I can still show this sort of voracious appetite for knowledge at my age, you younger ones have absolutely no excuse. Just go out and conquer it. Because in the end, this country is meant for us to build, primarily for our own sake. And I want to put the last word on this before Mofe comes in. There is competition in the air. I'm sure the last few months, you people must have been rudely awoken to the news that Nigeria was going to open up its legal space to UK lawyers. I remember, we all went up in arms. Why should it happen? All so forth and so on. What this is telling me and you is that larger interests are determining how your business fortune goes. If the federal government sees that its larger interest is to promote trade with countries that are able to invest in Nigeria, and in return they are saying, okay, fine, we want to come in, but please open up your legal space, open up, make it free trade. Let us go. We've done the African Continental Free Trade Area, which technically means that we can ply our trade within the African continent. Global trade is big now. Now, if that happens, if we do not get prepared for that competition, you will see that the volume of the legal market will grow, it will deepen, but the share by the Nigerian lawyers will shrink. And my prayer for every one of you younger generation is that we identify these opportunities. I'm not one for feeling sorry for ourselves. And as I told you, nobody's going to serve you lunch on your table. You go out and look for it, collaborate, talk with your colleagues, have all sorts of combinations, mergers, whatever. Because the business principles are good for the legal profession as they are for businesses. So if you don't have a skill, work with a lawyer who has a skill in a particular area. By the time you combine forces, you'll be more relevant to the market. So in doing so, you will deepen the legal services market. And if we want to put numbers on it, from the little perhaps you've been seeing on what has been happening with all these foreign judgments against Nigeria, and you're hearing the sort of fees that are going down, they're in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But how much of that money is staying back in Nigeria? Recently, the president of NBA appointed me as chairman of the committee on the protection of legal business in Nigeria. And my interpretation is, how do you take this message out to young lawyers that we should own our business, expand it? That's my interpretation of it. And as I told you, if we put numbers, you imagine if we generate close to $1 billion in legal fees in a year in Nigeria. And out of good neighborliness, we say, okay, 500 million of it goes out to foreign lawyers. and $500 million remains within Nigeria. $500 million circulating as fees amongst legal practitioners will make a significant difference to legal practice in Nigeria. We produce 6,000 lawyers, as you know, I'm on the body of benchers, 6,000 lawyers every year. Where do you keep them? This market's got to expand to include these young lawyers that are coming in. Today, many of them feel despondent. They feel the older lawyers have taken everything off the table. They have to settle for crumbs. It's just an appearance. As sure as night succeeds day, these younger ones will take over from the older ones. But, like I said, there's no free lunch. If you don't know the subject matter, you will be, no matter how young you are, you will be outdated. Knowledge is power. And I think I'd like to end on that note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Etomi. Once again, we are very glad you came. We have opened up so many points for discussion. I believe some of the questions are started coming in, but we'll let them flow after the next few and what we say. Thank you. Let's see. Mofesomo Tayo-Oyetibo, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Mofesomo Tayo-Oyetibo is an energy expert. He's been involved in so many commercial transactions, and he's also an litigator. Funny enough, recent times, I think we heard about judgments against Nigeria lawyers. That's the team. So we, at this point, I think I'll just do a little. He's involved in, like I said, so many commercial transactions. And so it's right having both litigation and corporate commercial skills. We would want you to speak to us on electricity, and this is how we'll go about it. Sometime last year, 2023, there was a constitutional amendment that moves the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent list. And what this signified that it gave states the legal powers to legislate on power. And so that means they had the rights to gencos, generating companies, distribution companies, and even transmission companies. Following the amendment of the 1999 Constitution to make for that provision, the statute was enacted, which was the Electricity Sector Act of 2023 too. Following that, a lot of states have started passing their local laws. Lagos states, Enugu, Abia, Ekiti, and recently the other states. And as a branch, NBA-Warri, we are proud to say we were part of the persons that went to the House of Assembly, to Delta State House of Assembly, to submit our memoranda on the Delta State electricity sector law. Now, on this has opened up a whole lot of conversations and a flurry of activities. We have, so with that, we can have licenses. The states can now license, like I said earlier, gencos, generating companies, transmission companies, distribution companies. And this also brings great room for a lot of investors to come in. So we're going to have so much capital, private capital coming into the sector. Unlike in the past where we had just government investing, and of course, we know what the result has been. We've just been hovering around 4,500 megawatts every, for now, that is what we have. And it's not enough for a nation of 200 million persons. The investments are coming. The space is widening up. your private capital, the private towns are there. Government is just to raise policies. Power has been devolved from the federal government to subnationals. And so a lot of legal services will be needed, both on the policy side, on the private capital side, and also